It is my honor, my pleasure to be here this morning. We are here to have a very candid conversation. I'm not one of those facilitators of conversation who has a great panel and says, okay, each one of you give a 10-minute presentation and then we'll have a conversation. We'll have a conversation right out of the box, but if you look at your description of it today, it makes it clear that we're talking about the 1% dilemma. It's interesting, the 1% dilemma. That would imply it's a dilemma. That would imply there's something that we need to do about this dilemma. America at an economic crossroads. The abstract in your description makes it clear that America has suffered the most serious economic downturn since the Great Depression. You don't need a description here to tell you that. We're living it every day. The effects in the economy, all of us deal with it. Those of us in public television, trust me, we know we're out there trying to get sponsors all the time. It's hard to do that when people are laying other folks off. It's hard to do that when we're dealing with storms that are serious, where people are trying to keep their businesses afloat, if you will. But unlike the Great Depression of America, the world has seen growth of wealth in a very small area. Now, here's what's interesting. The question becomes, is it a dilemma if, in fact, this 1% is doing better than ever before? Better than ever before. But the chasm, the distance between the 1% and everyone else becomes greater and greater. The question is, A, why is that? B, why is that a serious problem? And C, most importantly, what the heck are we supposed to do about it? So there are political, ethical, social, and frankly, moral issues involved. There's an educational component, and the fact that NJIT is leading the effort to have this discussion and brings together this distinguished panel only says a great deal about NJIT. And the fact that they're one of our biggest underwriters of our television program has nothing to do with why I would kiss the butt of NJIT publicly in this way on camera. That is only by coincidence. It is my honor to introduce the following folks. I'm going to start with Debra Osofsky. Debra is a negotiator, administrator, problem solver, and teacher with a diverse portfolio as a freelance consultant. She is currently working with the faculty union at UMDNJ, including addressing the issues raised by the upcoming integration of UMDNJ at Rutgers. Is that happening? I've heard about that. She also teaches a college and grad course on negotiations at Rutgers University, a fine institution where if you could ever, by the way, for those of you, I got a PhD from Rutgers. Everyone who asks, I tell them it's an Ivy League school. Please do not tell them otherwise. As well as trains and professionals in this field of negotiation, contract analysis, and advocacy skills. Please, let's hear for Debra Osofsky. On the end, Mr. John Sarno, President and General Counsel, Employers Association of New Jersey. John Sarno is a labor lawyer and President of Employers Association of New Jersey. By the way, quick description of that organization, John, is?
Labor, employment law, healthcare, comprised of employers throughout the state.
Got it. And the other piece that is very important is that John also teaches law, public policy, and ethics in the NJIT Executive MBA program. Let's hear for that because that speaks for itself.
Thank you.
Finally, for those of us who teach in the field of leadership development, to have someone like Jeff Cohen here, who's the president of J.M. Cohen Associates, it's an honor and a pleasure because he's a trailblazer in the field. He's been doing this for a very long time. He's a pioneer in executive coaching and award-winning leadership development authority. He's founded his consulting firm, Cohen Associates 30 years ago. By the way, why did you do that before the rest of us thought this was so important, Jeff?
Because I'm smarter than, no.
See, modesty is a specialty. Go ahead.
It was just a culmination of everything I had done up to that point, and it just made a lot of sense for me to help people on a one-on-one basis.
Let's go at this 1% dilemma. John, question. The 1% doing really well, right?
Oh, yeah.
What happened to the middle class in between the 1% and those who are really struggling?
I think some tremendous convergence of very important trends. We can kind of net it out and just say globalization for the sake of discussion. what's happened, and we heard some of it with our keynote speaker. At the end of World War II, the United States was the only game in town. We still have the biggest economy, but coming out of World War II, we had the only functioning economy. Think about it. Japan was flattened, Germany was defeated, the Soviet Union, all the major economies in the world were reduced to rubble. So that throughout the late 40s, 50s, 60s, an American worker made what the rest of the world consumed. And it was a golden moment for our country and for what we now call the middle class. So that in my case, my dad, who was a laborer and a factory worker, was able to buy a home, send me to school on a laborer's salary.
That was the free market.
That was the free market.
It was working.
It was working, but more than that, it was stability. There was monopoly, and we were the only game in town. And what's happened with globalization, at least since through the 70s and the 80s and beyond, is that we're competing with the rest of the world. Wages are lower in all of the countries that our keynote speaker mentioned, in China and India, so that for the middle class then, wages have not gone up, they've stagnated, and that accounts in part for this huge wage gap and income gap.
And Deborah, jump in here, because you've talked in preparation for this about the polarization of job opportunities. How does that dovetail with what John was just saying?
I think that one thing that we're looking at that's very difficult right now is, and David Altour talks about this in his paper, and that is you have a polarization, which is you have a growth of job opportunities not happening in the middle. So the majority of the jobs right now that are being produced are for the bottom end, for people of a high school education or less, and people who have a master's degree or higher. And the jobs that are in the middle, a lot of those there's not growth going on there. That's dangerous and problematic, because a lot of what allows you a middle class is having jobs in the middle. That the high school education is now considered, that college education at the middle. And so there's an issue of where are the jobs being produced, and some of what happened is you had offshoring of jobs, and you also had computerization that allowed a lot of technical jobs to be taken over by computers, and you don't need skilled workers. And so what do you do with that? If you care about a middle class, if you think that a middle class matters, then you need to look at where are the jobs and how do you make sure that the jobs match what we want from a political or social standpoint, which is a solid middle class.
By the way, feel free. I'm going to, as I said, a conversation, which means we want you involved, be engaged. I know everyone's don't be working on the technology now. Feel free to jump right in. Challenge us. Challenge what is being said. Ask whatever question you want, because while I have some questions, you have even better questions. You're living it every day. You're hearing right now some analysis that talks about the challenges in the job marketplace out there. For some folks here, particularly students and others, that's got to be something that's hitting you right in the face. All of us. So don't hold back. Jump in here, Jeff.
Well, I think there's a real issue.
Put your hand up if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I think there's a real issue in terms of these two groups really even be able to talk to each other.
Which two groups?
I'm talking about the 1% and the 99%. So that's kind of where, and so the 99% of course includes part of this middle class, group. And so everyone, certainly in each of these, if we can trifurcate the groups here, have their own views, and they really aren't able to reason through the process and understand what the other group is thinking about. They've already made up their mind about how things are, rather than think about how they might be and how they might in fact work in concert, how they might collaborate in some way, so that we can come out with a solution where the middle class and others are able to really get as Obama might say, a fair shake. Because...
Oh, back up for a second. I mean, I want to understand this. We keep talking about the 1% and the 99%. Let's put a face on it. Who the heck are we talking about? I mean, like, Is there anyone in this room who you think, by the way, if you were the 1% right now, and you heard this description, would you feel like, I'm not letting anybody know? Would you say to yourself, there's no way in the world, if people were talking about that 1%, that I'd identify myself, because it sounds like you're talking about a criminal class. It sounds like you're talking about a class of people, I don't want to be associated with them because that doesn't feel right. I want to be part of the 99, wouldn't you? You're shaking your head yes. Some are shaking their head no. It's a weird thing, right? There's 99 and then there's 1. Well, you'd want the cash of the 1. You'd want the cash of the 1. You'd want the second house, as long as it were not, down the Jersey Shore. But you'd want the cash of the 1, but you wouldn't want the stigma of the 1. And Jeff is saying, and there's no dialogue going on, much less warm feelings. In fact, he's saying there's a lot of hatred. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of, hey, you screwed up my life. No? Am I overstating it?
No, I think you're stating it correctly.
Put some hands up. Let's go. Go ahead. Jump in, and then I'm going to get over here.
Yeah. Is it good? Good.
You got something? Stand up. Tell everyone who you are. 1% or 99? 1%, right? A student at 1%. Let's hear for a student at NJIT at 1%. What an amazing university this is. Tell everyone who you are, Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry Vilburn, EMBA student for NJIT. So the 99% really doesn't have any power or collateral.
Speak up.
Any power when they battle against the 1% who has Goldman Sachs and what we call government Sachs influence in the government. How do we
editorialize?
So what power and how can the 99% really have influence over the 1% who has direct ear and influence on the government, who's supposed to be for the 99%?
Okay.
So-
I think.
But that's a good question. Go ahead.
I think there is something that's happening right now where the 99% in fact can have power, and that's the fiscal cliff.
The fiscal cliff, the thing we keep hearing everyone that Congress and the president are going to jump over or not jump over. You think there's an opportunity that answers Jerry's question. Go ahead.
I think there's a burning bridge here, and I think
Burning bridge, cliffs, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm very concrete. I think there is an opportunity for the 99% to say, look, if we don't fix this, if we don't communicate among these groups, then what is going to happen is we're going to have a second recession.
By the way, explain the fiscal. Everyone keeps talking about the fiscal cliff as if we all get it, like we get it, we understand it. It's a great metaphor because it's scary. You don't want to fall off the cliff. What the heck is the cliff?
Okay, there are two pieces of the fiscal cliff. One is that the taxes will go up, and second is that we will be cutting a lot of services, including defense contracts and other sorts of things. Now, if those two things happen,
You mean the Bush tax cuts automatically
will disappear.
Is that good for the 1% or bad?
I think it's bad for the one. It's bad for everyone.
Well, because they don't need it, John.
Truly in the 1%,
Go ahead.
that tax increase is not going to be to much of a bite.
Is it good for the 99%?
It's a wash for the 99.
How bad's the cliff then?
The cliff is about government spending,
Got it.
because that is the key to consumption, and 70% of our economy is based on consumption. So all of that government spending, whether it's on defense, whether it's on social services, whether it's on infrastructure, it's all about consumption and keeping the economy afloat.
Right.
Until there could be some realistic growth going forward.
Okay, but I want to give Jeff the chance. You're saying there's an opportunity here with the cliff to do what?
Right. Well, first of all, there will be a drop in GDP by about 1/3, which is not exactly what.
If
which,
what?
If in fact nothing happens and Congress doesn't move to make this change.
There'll be a drop in the gross national product by 1/3?
By
Well, that's the
1/3.
consumption that'll go down.
Got it. And what impact does that have on this 99.1% thing?
We're all going to suffer. Every one of us is going to suffer.
Who suffers worse, the 99%?
The 99%, of course, they're going to suffer because you got a bigger slice of the pie if you're in the 1% per capita, so to speak. So we're all going to suffer. I think there's going to definitely be, and what I'm reading is consistent with that. There's definitely going to be a recession. So we, as a larger group, can put influence on our representatives and make it clear that we can't live with this. We need to get everyone on the same page about making some changes and actually communicate.
Be specific, because Jerry asked, who the heck is speaking for us?
Right.
I think
So I'd like to,
that's the core of your question.
Yeah, I'd
no?
like to
Jerry?
approach that one.
Yes.
Okay, so I do think there is a question. It's important, I think, for collaboration, and I agree that having a conversation that leads to a collaborative solution is important. But in order for that to happen, you have to have advocates. The advocates have to be able to speak for you. So there's a question of who's speaking for the 99. And there's a funny thing, which is you have all these people who are sitting there and Occupy Wall Street, and you think, there are parts of that that I like, there are parts of it that I don't like, but I have sympathy with that. But there's nobody there who's advocating a point of view that's concrete. When you ask them what are their policy solutions, they say, you know, we're a collective and we don't have a policy position.
That's very reassuring.
So what I'd say is to use the institutions that do exist. The American people use the institution that existed in this last election to say what it is that they want. And I do think that this is a point where keep your political engagement up.
What did they say? They said they wanted the president to
They
serve
said they
4 more
wanted-
years, but what did they say that they wanted for the quote 99%,
Right.
as you interpret it?
Right. So they also said that they want to be able to tax the highest earners.
The 1%.
Right, and that was clear, and the president got that message. It was very clear from the
he got it,
polling.
but he's not the king. He's the president.
Right, and so therefore, in order to keep the dialogue going, right, if that's what you believe, you need to continue to communicate with your elected representatives that this is still an issue. The election is over, but you still care about this issue, because I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about how we structure the way the economy works, the way the tax code works, and I think that time to stay busy, and I'm also going to make a pitch for, there are other institutions, right? Labor unions are an excellent institution. Lots of people here probably feel differently about it, but it's a way for working people to express their views, have their views known. So political parties, labor unions, any kind of community group that you belong to, use the institutions that you belong to as ways of taking the voices that are diffuse, because it's 99, concentrating those views and making sure that advocates who speak for you are at the table when the decisions are being made.
Yeah, let's be clear. You're saying, in response to Jerry's question, I think you're saying that if we raise taxes, if the president gets his way, and the Republican-controlled Senate goes along, the Republican-controlled House, and they change their mind, and they vote to increase taxes on the wealthiest 1%, you believe that is better for the 99? Really? How so?
I absolutely believe that the revenue to be used to support the kind of programs that we need in this country, I think that, look, we talk about the middle class and what's important for the middle class, right? It's important for the middle class to have access to good jobs, so you can use, build your infrastructure, those can be good jobs. You give greater levels of security. I believe that having a national health insurance contributes to the security that the middle class needs to feel.
What does that have to do with increasing taxes?
There's
Well,
actually a more
More direct.
Go ahead, make the case.
I'll make the case.
Go ahead.
I think we have tolerated, Americans have tolerated reasonably well economic inequality, because we're an aspirational people.
Yep.
We are an upwardly mobile people, and we don't hate the rich.
Right.
I think the real problem here is the concentration of wealth and power is undermining the democratic process. So I think that's a big part of asking the 1% to pay more. Mm-hmm. It's a part of contributing to the greater good, and that seems to me particularly meaningful as the as the voices from the civil society begin to converge. I would make the direct point that the issue of taxes is really not only an economic issue, but it's an ethical issue, it's a moral issue, and it's an issue that arises out of the democratic process.
But it's not just about taxes, it's also about those cuts, and we do need to make some cuts in some of those areas like Social Security and Medicare, which the Democrats are not very willing to make. And so there has to be a give and take here, because if we just say, well, all we're going to do is just tax the 1%.
It makes the 99% feel better, though.
It makes them feel better, but it will not make them feel better in their pocketbook.
But I want to be clear. Are you saying, because I want to get more questions out here, you're saying if we just say, hey, that 1%, let's tax them because there'll be more revenue coming in to support many of the programs that you're talking about, that's not nearly enough, because some of these entitlement programs, like Social Security, like Medicare, you're saying if we don't take those on, which 99% benefiting from those, you're concerned about the future of those programs.
Not just the future of the programs, I'm concerned about the future of the whole economy.
Got it. Got some more questions here. Yes?
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask the question.
Real quick, yeah.
Hi, yes, I'm
Who are you?
Dr. Marguerite Schneider. I'm Associate Professor of Management here at NJIT. I have the point, and I think you kind of addressed it with the aspirational term. I think there's a deep cultural value here that's at stake. Why do so many of the 99% buy into this situation and allow it? Part are apathetic, part have given up on changing the situation, and part believe that, yes, they too or their children can join that 1%. And they believe
what's wrong with that?
that's the Horatio Alger myth, which does still apply here and there, but the issue is that the income distribution has become more skewed. And that leads to greater unfairness. Why are so many in the 99% afraid to change the system?
Well, I don't know
That
if they're
saying
afraid
what
to
I
change
just
the
said
system.
could get me labeled a socialist, which I'm not.
No, I don't think there's a fear of changing the system. I think there's I think you hit on it when you infer that there's a degree of passivity, and a lot of that has to do again with what we heard this morning about how campaigns are funded. But we do have a very robust civil society. There is a lot of pressure on Congress. The fact that they do run every 2 years, for better or worse, means that they have to go back into their district, they have to listen to their constituents, and I think there's going to be a deal. I'm fairly optimistic that there's going to be a deal before the end of the year.
A deal to do what? I mean, now it's a little inside.
To raise revenue, and to maybe cut some spending. Now, I'm not a big advocate of cutting spending, by the way, but I do realize that.
Okay, so you believe there should be significant, dramatic cuts or changes in Social Security and Medicare that require those who are in the 99% to kick in more? No. I do not advocate for cutting Social Security and Medicare. I do not advocate for that. Those programs are in trouble.
They're in trouble. I think you have to look at the budget as a whole. You have to look at the priorities of spending. You have to look at our defense needs, whether we need a military and all the rest that is big as what we have. But in any event, I'm pretty optimistic that there will be a deal to raise revenues and to cut spending, even though I'm not a big advocate of cutting spending.
You know, it's an interesting point. Debra was talking about political parties before on our station. PBS had a documentary the other night, and they were talking about, it was a fascinating film that was done, independent film, looking at the role of money in the political process. And do you realize, and you were talking about political parties, now I'm assuming you meant both parties.
Engagement in your political party. It's
Yep.
America.
And I'm assuming that you meant that the Republican Party was just as engaged and interested in the 99% as the Democratic Party.
That's my belief. No, that's not my belief.
Oh, because you didn't differentiate, so I wasn't sure.
Well, people have their political beliefs, but what I'm saying is continued engagement in the political process matters.
I'll tell you why I said that. In the documentary, what was fascinating about it is that Chuck Schumer, the senior senator from New York, who's one of the more liberal senator is a big advocate of labor unions. One of the biggest reasons why a particular law that I know all of you are familiar with that allows for those who run hedge funds, what do they pay? 11, 12, 13%?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, I know they're in the 1% because they run hedge funds. And for years, there's been an effort to get them to pay what police and firemen pay on their income taxes, which would be
23, 27.
and they would be in the 99%. And in this documentary, it's not opinion, it's a fact, that, so we can all be clear on how complex this is, when you get involved in your political party, it's a little more complex, that the biggest reason why the effort to get those who run hedge funds, who are protected by the 1%, a special law that allows them to pay that ridiculously low percentage of their taxes, that's half of what police and fire make, right? Half of what they pay, is because Senator Schumer, a liberal Democrat who supports unions, raised tens of millions of dollars from those on Wall Street, largely hedge funds, as the head of the Senate Democratic Committee to elect Democratic senators, and that he has blocked the effort to change the law so that they would pay the 1% what police and firemen and others, I'm only saying police and firemen because that's representative of the 1%. The senator doesn't deny it. My point is simply this. If anyone thinks that it's simply who you put in office and what party they are in versus where the money they get comes from and what those players want and what percent those players come from, and trust me, nobody's given tens of millions of dollars in the 99%, Senator Schumer is blocking the effort to have the disparity that we talk about. And by the way, Senator Schumer is representative of a lot of others. He just happens to have a lot of power. I just want to make that clear. And you know the point I'm talking. That's not my opinion, by the way.
No, I understand. So, I mean, I do think that something you're raising here is, I think, goes to the question that this professor asked, which is part of what's going on here. Why is it that we tolerate it? And I think part of the reason why we tolerate it is that you have, in New York City particularly, and in the country as a whole, we all understand in the 99% that Wall Street matters.
Yes.
And that Wall Street being successful matters. And when we try to do something to change Wall Street, whether that's about banking regulation or are we going to do a bailout, the whole bailout conversation, people, or even very intelligent people, get stymied because we are told, right, that if you do that, if you don't bail out Wall Street,
Too big to fail.
it's too big to fail, right? And we're going to destroy our economy. Now, New York City has that particular issue because tax revenues and the business is built on it, so you end up with these bizarre scenarios where the perhaps one might say that Representative Schumer's positions don't make sense, but more than one thing is going on. But really, all of America kind of said with the bailout of Wall Street, okay, we're being told it's too big to fail and that we have to do this.
What does that have to do with a hedge fund manager who's making $13, $14 million a year, definitely part of the 1%, paying 12% in taxes, while a policeman or fireman or teacher pays 26%, and they're part of the 99, and a Democratic senator who represent a liberal.
Right.
The point I'm making is not about Senator Schumer. The point I'm making is that you cannot simply believe that electing people of one party or the other who says that they're going to do that changes things, because the money that they get comes from the 1%. And I don't want to be a fatalist about this, but I'm not convinced that it is simply who you elect.
Right.
Because Senator Schumer acknowledges what he's doing, but he's saying, where do you think I'm getting the money from?
Well, elections do matter. I'll quickly just make the point, because I know you want to go on for a question. But, you know, again, this morning's speaker talked about the Citizens United case and how campaigns are funded. You know, that's not immutable. That case is not given to us by God. That's the Supreme Court of the United States. That's 9 judges up there. So who serves on the Supreme Court in this particular case matters. Who's elected president matters.
You put that in context, in layperson's language.
Well, the unlimited amounts of corporate money that goes into, anonymously, that went into this year's campaign, tens of billions of dollars, was a direct result of a Supreme Court decision.
Right.
Not a law, not a statute, not even a constitutional provision. 9 judges, well, actually 5, interpreted the First Amendment to permit this unlimited funding of campaigns.
Does it create a
That's
disparity
one
between
vote.
the 1 and the 99? Does it create? It does.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, it not only, because the economic power then gets translated into political power. And once you have political power, you have the tax code. And the tax code is essentially, you can characterize it as a welfare plan for the 1%.
Got it. I'm going to get some more questions here. Students as well. Yes, another faculty member. Ron?
Yes.
I'm concerned. I'll hold the microphone.
Okay. I'm Ron Sverdlov. I teach finance here in the School of Management. And you talked about Senator Schumer, but of course the 1%, the Wall Street people, have enough money that they give to both sides. So it doesn't really, in that case, that particular case, it doesn't matter so much.
It matters because the Democrats control the Senate
It does. Okay. But
and the committees.
But what I wanted to talk about is the statement a little earlier that we are an upwardly mobile society. That is the theory. That has been perhaps true in the past, but recent evidence is that we are a much less upwardly mobile society than many of the, for example, European countries, which are supposedly, socialistic and have stagnant economies. In fact, we are not a very upwardly mobile society these days, and that's part of the problem between the 1% and the 99%.
But we're a faith-based society, is what we are.
Faith-based?
Faith-based, yeah, we believe, I agree that when you look at the statistics, you're absolutely correct. I've looked at those statistics essentially probably the same time that you did, and you're right. Empirically, we are not as upwardly mobile as we think, but we believe we are. We aspire to be upwardly mobile, and that's a tremendous motivation for work and productivity.
So what the heck are we telling students at NJIT? I mean, hope and dream, but don't get stupid about it? I mean, what are we really saying? Like, that's a nice thing to think in your head, but look at the statistics and get real? To play devil's advocate, you're saying the numbers don't bear it out.
But I think the problem with the 99% is that they're not organized.
Around
What's been the most organized group in the United States? The Tea Party. And whatever we think about the Tea Party, they've gotten their way. More people in the House of Representatives were elected through support of the Tea Party than any other group. So there is a organized group, and we can compare that with the Wall Street people.
And you're talking about
the
Occupy
Wall Street. And if we can compare those two groups, and you can see which has been organized and which has not, and which has a vision and which does not. So we need either a leader, and the speaker talked about a Martin Luther King kind of leader, or I was thinking kind of a Lincoln kind of leader, who can bring groups together and have a common vision and have that vision be accepted in a broad swath of people, and bring that group together and make something happen, which, of course, has not been happening.
Since President Obama just got reelected, it's interesting. Since President Obama just got reelected, he's got 4 years. He's not running again. He doesn't have the pressure of having to campaign 4 years from now. What are the odds that the president could bring together, as a leader, the 1 and the 99% around some? You're shaking your head already, John.
No, his history has not been such.
The House, 2 years.
Go ahead.
The House, the
House of Representatives.
Everything that we're talking about, all the changes that we're implying starts with the House. The House has the authority for all spending, for all taxing.
By the Constitution.
Yeah. So in 2 years, if the Democrats can control the House, then I think that the president has a shot to being transformational in the later
So
term.
you think, again, if the Democrats control, after
I do.
everything I just said about Chuck Schumer,
I do.
if you think if the Democrats control all the branches of government on the non-judicial side, then significant positive things will happen because one party will rule?
I do. Now,
Really?
I understand.
In spite of where all that money's coming from.
I understand your point. I understand that there are corporate interests on both sides. I understand that the senator, who we thank for his honesty, by the way, if not his cynicism.
Senator Schumer.
With all of that, I think that it'll make a very, very.
His
big
argument was
difference.
very simple. Where the hell do you think the money's coming from?
Well,
Senator Schumer was like, yeah, you're right. I'm stopping it because that's what they wanted. And where do you think the money came from? All I'm saying is I'm fascinated by the argument that if the Democrats controlled the House and the Senate and the presidency, we would solve these problems, because I'm telling you, as a former legislator who understands where the money comes from, the 99% are not providing the money. The 1% is providing the money to both parties. Both parties. And even if you philosophically agree more with one party versus the other, the money is still coming from the same place. Am I wrong about that?
But even the rich have an interest in stability.
And that would be?
And that would be economic growth, that would be
Good. Okay.
investments in education, that would be investments in infrastructure, that would be
Good.
a more equitable
Fair.
tax base. I would think that the rich would be most interested in social stability.
Including higher taxes for themselves.
Including higher taxes for themselves.
Where's the survey that shows that?
I think that
I haven't seen that one, John.
We got an inclination of that when the president was elected in 2010, 2009.
Okay.
I think there was a lot of momentum for changing that tax code until the House switched.
Got it. See a bunch of hands on. Someone over there, and I'll get someone over here. Yes. Take one over there. Yes.
My question is related to our discussion based on raising the taxes, spending, and consumption. How do you think it would impact the CPI, Consumer Price Index, and the PPI, Producer Price Index, in the current situation, given the fact that half of the jobs are being transferred overseas? How do you see the next couple of months or next year impacting the consumer spending, which constitute a substantial part of economy?
And you are who?
Anam Ali, and I'm also the president of EMBA Partnership for NJIT.
And your concentration is in economics, is it not?
Yes.
Surprised. Yeah. Okay, good, yes.
I'll simply say that's my argument for not cutting spending. That's my whole argument, is that once you cut spending, you will suppress consumption, and then, as you're suggesting, you would have inflation. So that's my argument in a nutshell. Don't cut spending.
Jeff?
I don't think we have a shot at cutting, of raising the inflation, especially if nothing happens over the next couple of months. I think the economy is likely to go into a dip. So something has to happen sooner. But also related to the point about that if the Democrats had the House of Representatives, they did have the House of Representatives.
For the first 2 years.
For the first 2 years.
Right.
And what happened in terms of economy, there wasn't the emphasis. The president didn't understand what the issues were. He focused on health care, and he forgot, to a very large extent, about the economy. My view is that the past is the best single predictor of the future. I think there needs, I don't think that Obama, I voted for Obama. I don't think he is a transformational leader. I think we need a Lincolnian kind of leader.
What does that mean?
I don't think he thinks, I think he thinks big thoughts, but he doesn't know how to implement them.
What's a Lincolnian type
Well, like
leader?
Lincoln. Like Lincoln did, he brought together
Someone
his
who was
enemies.
very tall, not
He
photogenic, what?
Yeah, he had a beard and he had a big hat. He brought together his enemies and said, look, we have to solve a problem. And I don't think that Obama, as brilliant as he is and as articulate as he is, has that kind of acceptance or fire in his belly that Lincoln had.
You see this country electing through the process that we have in the primaries and the general election, electing such a figure who has to raise the money and go through the process of the 4 years plus, having such a dialogue, engaging voters, dealing with the insane media that we are, right? Doing that. You see that.
He was successful as he's been twice successful as a campaigner.
Yes.
I think there are numbers of issues. I mean, there are myriad of them, from the 47% to all the various not responding to Latinos, all the Republican trips plus the sensational organization that Axelrod put together.
That's about campaign mechanics. We're talking about something
But
bigger.
I think a lot of it is around campaign about the various mistakes that one party made, plus the mechanics. Those two things came together. Yeah. He should not have won, but for those facts, I think he did.
Yeah, finally, just on this, how easy was it to win? Because Mitt Romney, in many ways, became a very easy target to say, hey, and that's what the 1% looks like. That's what the 1% looks like. Someone, for many, that's what the 1% looks like. And that 1% doesn't know you, doesn't care about you, makes fun of you when he doesn't think that he's being video or audio taped, and basically thinks that the rest of you, the 99 or whatever percent he was using, 47, whatever, the rest of you, not us, but you, us and them, whoever, how he breaks it down, the rest of you were looking at our hand. In fact, if you check it out, just the other day, Mitt Romney, in explaining his loss, go back to the 99 and 1%, Mitt Romney just the other day explained his loss by saying, of course the president won.
He paid them off.
He gave gifts to the 99%. What he did was he figured out who the 99% were, women, minorities, and gave them stuff from the government, and you paid for it. He said, you know something, if I were a Democrat running 4 years, I'd get more free stuff, get the government paid for it, give out more stuff, because we can't beat that. Now, the cynicism there, you can decide for yourself, but that is easy to beat because it is so cynical and negative. But that doesn't solve any problems. That doesn't solve any problems for the rest of us who want to actually deal with this in a really meaningful way, Deborah, right?
Right, so I would have to say, at least for me, and I did not vote for him, Mitt Romney, and I think for a lot of Americans, was most appealing when he was talking about when he was being bipartisan, right? When I was in Massachusetts and I was in the legislature, you know, when I was the governor there, I worked with the legislature. I go across the aisle, but he emphasized near the end of his campaign, as his campaign started going down, his discussion about how he was a bipartisan person and knew how to walk across the aisle and work with people across the aisle. That rhetoric went up. And so what I'd say is, we talk about not just the Democrats making sure that their party does what they should do, also that the Republicans make sure that their party do what they should do, which is to go for the best of the rhetoric from the campaign and try something bipartisan.
What's the message to the if you were advising the next Republican candidate for president, what would the message be to the quote 99%?
Someone who can, I think that to truly run on a desire to try to be productive and work in a bipartisan way. And I think that from what in terms of
be more precise.
Be more precise.
Ronald Reagan said.
That sounds nice. Be specific.
Okay, you want to?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, if you were advising the Republican candidate, if you say, listen, I'm going to run as a bipartisan candidate, that sounds nice, but be more specific in a passionate, spirited message that moves the 99%, some of them, over to your side, so they say, you know what, I can relate to this candidate. And bipartisanship's not going to get it done.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan said that the rising tide lifts all ships.
Go ahead.
And if the Republicans could have said that and made some, they could have made a lot of hay from that, because that would have brought everyone together and said, look, if we can improve the economy, then everyone is going to benefit from it.
Does a rising tide raise all boats? Does a rising tide raise all ships? Does it?
Let me quickly play devil's advocate to that. Because first of all, Reagan copied Kennedy on that one. But in any event, let me just play devil's advocate. I don't think that the rising tide does raise all ships. I think in a free market it might, but in a rigged market.
Rigged meaning?
Rigged meaning that there. I mean, if you look at
Well, you're paying
global
12%
trade
on making $15 million
in a rigged market. I don't think that a rising tide raises all boats. I really don't. I think in a free market,
but
in
not
a liberal,
really free.
how can this is not a free market? This is a highly regulated, gerrymandered market, and I think under the circumstances, while that rhetoric is appealing about lifting all boats, I just
But
don't.
everyone here at NJIT as a student should be working hard and aspiring to what?
Pursue happiness. They should be pursuing their happiness. They should be creating value. They should be.
Go ahead.
They should be investing in their careers. They should be involved in lifelong learning, personal growth, doing the best that you can possibly do.
Should they want to get into the 1%?
Absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
want to make sure. Yes, sir.
Homer Bonitas, School of Management. I'm part of the finance faculty here. I think we're stereotyping too much here because Warren Buffett and there's also a group called Patriotic Millionaires who are spearheading a campaign to increase their marginal tax rates that they should pay, okay, that they feel the responsibility towards society where they made their wealth. So we should not group everyone into one.
The exception or the rude.
Good
You're right, the exception of the rule.
But because you're super rich, it doesn't mean that you're greedy.
You think there's a groundswell for this?
I don't know about that.
What do you think? Warren Buffett got lots of other multi-billionaires saying, hey, Warren, we're with you on this. Let's move.
I think it's a growing movement.
You do?
I think it's a growing movement because society has specific social limits that it will tolerate. Okay, and right now, the general feeling in society is that this group of people,
1%?
1%, has the highest marginal tax rate of 15%. And this only applies to the hedge funds. Now, this other group of patriotic millionaires are saying, you know, we're not hedge funds necessarily, some are maybe, but we should be paying a high marginal tax rate because it's our social responsibility. So to throw everyone into one basket, I think
It's not fair.
it's not fair.
Let's get some more comments here. Just hold up. Let's get some more comments out here because I got about 10 minutes left. Yes? Carl, tell everyone who you are.
Well, my name is Carl Brody. I'm a prospective student, but I'm a small business owner. But with this past election, the nation has been divided, you know, black and white. Race has played a major part in this election. And to go back to what Mr. Cohen said, yes, the 99% is divided and has no leader, and that is because of race. And I think before the country can move forward, they have to work on the race issues. Now, what do you think we need to do to...
We're divided?
Yes, we are.
Who'd you vote for?
I voted for Obama.
Me too. So are we that far apart?
We're not there.
I just want to make sure. Is that because we're from Newark? I mean, what's going on here?
I don't know what's going on, but you know, you have people now saying, you know, some countries want to secede from the union. You know, that's been going on all week. So what do we have to do now to bring the country back together in order to move forward?
Does race complicate the whole 1 and 99% thing? Really? It does?
Well, it divides the 99.
Oh, now you're going to really complicate it.
I think the point is that it divides the 99, and I agree.
But wait, race and gender complicate the 199 thing even more?
Sure.
But how so? Tell us everyone who you are, because you're a faculty member.
I'm a faculty member. I'm Virginia Logan, and I'm an African American, and I'm a female. So I just wanted to if it wasn't obvious. But as an African American female, yes, I can personally attest to the perspectives that I listened to from both parties. As I looked at representation in the audience from both parties, we have to truly be reflective of these United States of America. And US doesn't mean us versus you or I, means the United States of America. And I truly believe that we have to take that perspective, regardless of party, to truly reflect the population and the demographics within the US. So it's not just binders of women. We've been around for a long time, okay? You shouldn't have had to look in 2012 this hard for some qualified female candidates. So I think overall, we, the United States of America, we, whichever party you're affiliated with or independent, have to truly look at the demographics and the taxpayers, whether it's 11%, 20%, 30%, what have you, and truly be reflective. And I believe if we start having those dialogues, then we can kind of really look beyond gender, race, and look at us as an economy.
Point well taken. Real quick, and the 1%, of the 1%, what percent of the 1% do you think are women? Come on. Half? Half?
By virtue of marriage? Are we talking marriage now? Just being married to a rich guy?
By virtue of marriage. Oh, that was, John. Oh.
I mean, it's infinitesimal. It's infinitesimal.
How small are we talking?
Who knows? But it's tiny.
10%.
It's tiny.
Their own wealth?
Look at corporate America. Look at CEOs.
Okay.
Actually, women live longer.
What percent of the 1% are African American?
A tiny percent.
Look at CEOs.
Do you have the number?
White men.
There you go.
What's that? The CEO of Xerox
Yes.
is
And
an
how many
African
are there
American.
of them are there?
And how many can she have lunch with a table full of black
Okay,
women?
see, now we're really getting down into the weeds. Okay, we got 5 minutes left. Let's get some comments here. Let's wrap it up. We have a schedule. I know, Mark, you're looking at me with the evil eye. I know. I got it. Let's go.
Yeah,
Who are you?
Alan Yan. Before I joined NJIT, I worked at a hedge fund. So I used to be a 1%, now I'm 99%.
The master of the universe. All right.
So I think talking about 1%, or actually 2%, several days ago, Obama mentioned 2% because he wanted to raise $1.6 trillion in revenue. So now it's 2%.
So it's the 2 and the 98.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we're getting closer.
So,
Keep doubling up.
But talking about 1 or 2% missing the point. The point is, during the past 3 decades, the real decline of American economy. To give you a number, in 1980, okay, the real personal income for male group between 25 and 34, real income is $39,000. 30 years later, 2010, the same group, real income, $32,000. The decline of 19%. That's a real decline. Another point, okay, how big you want government to be? Okay, 100 years ago, the government share in GDP is only about 2%. Now it's over 20%. So how big you want government to be, right?
Okay.
So the Republicans are right.
Well, we have
Is that what you took from that? Is that what you took from that, Jeff?
apples and oranges. We have a much more complex economy and society and a much more complex globe.
I'm going to let this young lady here. You are a student here, are you not? Tell everyone who you are. Come on, stand up. You're not nervous. Come on. 1% or 99? 99. Where do you want to be? 1%. I just want to clarify. Go ahead.
To the professor's point, I aspire to be in the...
Speak up.
To the professor's point, I aspire to be a part of the 1% as well as, my children. But if you all could give me 3 bullet points besides our advocates, what else can we do to reconcile these 2 groups?
Specifically, it's a great way to end it, by the way. All right, let's hear for all the students who are here participating and involved and being a part of the solution instead of just complaining. 3 concrete recommendations, right? 1 each. 1 each, a concrete recommendation for all the students and everyone else who want to be part of the solution and not just complain about it. Go. Let's go, Jeff. Or I'll come back to you. Go ahead,
yes.
Deborah.
Okay, so there's a bill pending in Congress. Let's see what number we have.
I got it.
You got it?
It is HR
614.
HR
6411. Okay.
And what is it? Is the Inclusive Prosperity Act.
Right. So inclusive.
What does it do?
Right. Financial transaction tax. Okay, and it's another way to try to get to the kind of money that we need in order to support the kind of programs that are going to support the middle class. And what it does is you get a very small percentage tax on your stock transactions and other financial transactions, basically 0.5%. And this kind of tax can be a different way, rather than just trying to go after this 99% or the 1%, which probably is not enough, right? And that tax, if supporting that tax is a way to support the kind of infrastructure bank support for the social programs that people care about.
It's a specific piece of legislation. If people want to get more information, speak to Debra afterwards.
Right.
It's not a magic bullet. It's not a panacea, but Debra believes it will move us in the right direction. Jeff, go.
Participate. Encourage the people the organizations that you're closest with to collaborate with the enemy. To collaborate with the enemy, encourage them to involve in a real dialogue that isn't skewed, but in fact tries to find where the common threads are that you could all agree on.
And Jeff makes a great point. For those of us in the media, I will tell you, and Jeff didn't have a chance to talk about this, but he's right. I can tell you, for those of you who watch cable news on a regular basis, you can watch my colleagues and friends in Fox and my colleagues and friends in MSNBC every night, and it is as if they are talking about a different country. Because every night they are attacking each other and those who they believe their primary constituencies are. And that may be fine for their ratings, that may be fine for what it is they are trying to accomplish as networks. But boy, it has nothing to do with a meaningful conversation of trying to move forward. And I know both networks, and I'm very close to those folks, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And it's not a particularly honest dialogue, because what you do is you bring on people who reinforce what you believe, or you bring on folks who don't believe what you believe, and you beat the heck out of them. That's not what is meaningful. And that's why those of us in public television are the good guys. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay. Finally, John, you got it.
It's really about getting these people out of their gated communities, isn't it? Right? It's about reinvigorating the public space, reinvigorating the public schools, reinvigorating public sports, the wider part of our culture. Stop glorifying the privatization of youth sports and recreation and everything else. It's, when I hear your word reconciliation, getting people to talk to one another, people got to get out of their communities and actually meet and engage in that dialogue that was mentioned. And you're not going to do that until you reinvigorate the public space. So that's what I would focus on.
Folks, please join me in congratulating and saying thank you to our distinguished panel. And from my point of view, Marjorie, I want to say thank you to Dr. Bloom and everyone at NJIT. I want to say thank you to Elaine Frazier and everyone in this program. I am honored and thrilled to be connected to this extraordinary institution, not just because they're a major sponsor of our program, but more importantly, because they are a beacon here in the city of Newark and the state of New Jersey for everything that is good when it comes to having an honest dialogue with people with different points of view and allowing others to be a part of that and documenting it on camera. This has been a meaningful discussion, and the discussion continues. Thank you very much. Have a great day.